The sun was setting over the broken horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and red. The air smelled of smoke and metal, a constant reminder of what had happened. In the distance, the ruins of a once great city stretched as far as the eye could see. Buildings lay crumbled, their skeletal remains standing like silent witnesses to the destruction that had fallen upon Earth. The streets were empty now, except for a small group of humans who moved cautiously through the wreckage. Lina tightened her grip on her rifle, her knuckles white against the worn handle. She scanned the area carefully, her sharp eyes darting from one shadowy corner to another. Behind her, Marcus adjusted the straps of his backpack, making sure the precious cargo inside was secure. It wasn't food or water. It was something far more valuable, something that could turn the tide of this endless war. "They're still out there," Lina whispered, her voice low but steady. "I can feel it." Marcus nodded, though he didn't say anything. He trusted Lina's instincts. They all did. She had been part of the resistance since the beginning, long before anyone believed humanity stood a chance. Now, 2 years into the invasion, she was one of the few who hadn't given up hope. Her determination was contagious, keeping the group going even when everything seemed hopeless. The aliens had come without warning. One moment, life on Earth was normal, or as normal as it ever got. And the next, ships descended from the sky, blotting out the sun. At first, people thought it was some kind of misunderstanding. Maybe they were explorers, curious about humanity. But those hopes were shattered within hours. The invaders attacked without mercy, their weapons tearing through cities like paper. Millions died in the first wave alone. Humanity fought back, of course. What else could they do? But the aliens were faster, stronger, and smarter. Their technology was unlike anything humans had ever seen. For months, it felt like the fight was futile. Every battle ended in defeat. Every plan met with failure. Cities fell one by one, and survivors were forced to flee into the wilderness, hiding wherever they could. But then something changed. Slowly, painfully, humanity began to adapt. They scavenged alien tech from the battlefield, learning how to use it against their enemies. They built new weapons, new defenses, and most importantly, they learned to work together. Nations that had once been divided now stood side by side, united by a single goal: survival. Lina's group was just one piece of that larger effort. They called themselves the Reclaimers, a name chosen to remind them why they fought. Their mission was simple but dangerous: retrieve an alien artifact hidden deep inside enemy territory. No one knew exactly what it was, but rumors said it held the key to understanding the invaders' weaknesses. If true, it could be the breakthrough humanity needed. The group moved silently through the ruins, their footsteps muffled by the thick layer of ash covering the ground. Lina raised a hand, signaling for everyone to stop. Ahead, the faint hum of machinery grew louder. She crouched down, motioning for Marcus to join her. Together, they peered around the corner of a collapsed building. What they saw made their blood run cold. Ahead of them, the source of the humming became clear. A group of alien drones hovered near the entrance of a half-collapsed structure. Their sleek, metallic bodies gleamed faintly in the dim light, and their sharp, insect-like limbs twitched as they scanned the area. The drones were small compared to the massive war machines humanity had faced before, but Lina knew better than to underestimate them. These things were fast, deadly, and could alert the entire alien force with just one signal. Lina glanced at Marcus, who was already reaching for his backpack. Inside was a small device they called the jammer. It wasn't much to look at, just a boxy piece of tech cobbled together from scavenged parts, but it was their best chance to stay hidden. If they could activate it in time, the drones wouldn't detect them. The timing was everything. One wrong move, and they'd be surrounded within minutes. "Ready?" Lina whispered, her voice barely audible even to herself. Marcus gave a quick nod, his hand steady as he pulled out the jammer. He pressed a button on its side, and a soft whirring sound filled the air. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, one by one, the drones froze mid-air. Their glowing eyes dimmed slightly, and their movements slowed as if they were confused. It worked. The jammer had disrupted their sensors. "Go," Lena said, her voice firm but quiet. Now. The group moved quickly, sticking close to the shadows as they slipped past the immobilized drones. Every step felt like it echoed in the silence, and Lena's heart pounded in her chest. She kept her rifle raised, ready to fire if anything went wrong. Behind her, Marcus held the jammer tightly, his eyes darting between the drones and the path ahead. They couldn't afford to lose focus, not even for a second. As they reached the entrance of the structure, Lena stopped and signaled for the others to wait. She stepped inside first, her boots crunching softly against broken glass and debris. The interior was dark, lit only by the faint glow of alien machinery scattered around the room. Strange symbols glowed on the walls, pulsing with an eerie light that made her skin crawl. This place wasn't just a random building. It was some kind of outpost, maybe even a lab. In the center of the room stood what they had come for, the artifact. It was larger than Lena had expected, about the size of a small car, and shaped like a jagged crystal. Its surface shimmered with colors that seemed to shift and change, almost like it was alive. Wires and tubes connected it to the surrounding equipment, feeding it energy from an unknown source. Whatever it was important. That much was obvious. But there was a problem. Standing between them and the artifact were two alien guards. Unlike the drones outside, these creatures were tall and heavily armored, their bodies covered in thick, black plating. Their heads were elongated, with multiple glowing eyes that scanned the room constantly. Each carried a weapon that looked far more advanced than anything Lena had ever seen. Lena held up a hand to stop the others from advancing. Her mind raced as she tried to think of a plan. The guards were too strong to take on directly, and any noise would bring reinforcements running. They needed another way. Slowly, she turned to Marcus, who was already pulling something else from his backpack, a small round object with a blinking red light. "A distraction," he mouthed silently. Lena hesitated for a moment, then nodded. It was risky, but they didn't have a choice. Marcus rolled the object across the floor, and it landed with a soft thud a few feet away from the guards. A second later, it exploded in a burst of bright light and loud noise. The aliens turned toward the sound, their weapons raised, and began moving in that direction. "Now," Lena hissed, motioning for the others to follow her. They sprinted toward the artifact, their footsteps echoing in the sudden chaos. Lena's heart was racing, but she forced herself to stay focused. They were so close, just a little further, and they might finally have a chance to turn the tide of the war. The group reached the artifact just as the loud buzzing of the alien guards began to fade into the distance. Lena wasted no time. She knelt beside the strange, glowing crystal and examined the wires and tubes connecting it to the surrounding machinery. Her hands moved quickly but carefully, her fingers tracing the alien tech. She didn't fully understand how it worked, but she had seen enough of their technology to know one thing. They always built things with a failsafe. There had to be a way to disconnect it without causing an explosion or alerting the entire outpost. "Marcus," she whispered, glancing over her shoulder. "Hand me the cutter." Marcus pulled a small tool from his belt and passed it to her. The cutter was another piece of scavenged alien tech, modified by the Resistance to work on their enemy's equipment. Lena took a deep breath and focused. She couldn't afford to make a mistake. With slow, deliberate movements, she positioned the cutter over one of the thick cables. A single spark could bring the aliens running back. As she worked, the others stood guard, their weapons ready. Sarah, a young medic with sharp eyes, kept watch near the entrance. She flinched at every sound, her grip tightening on her rifle. Behind her, Jake held a makeshift shield made from salvaged metal, prepared to block any attack. None of them spoke. The tension in the air was thick enough to cut with a knife. Finally, there was a soft click, and the cable came loose. The artifact's glow dimmed slightly, but it didn't shut down completely. Lena frowned. This wasn't going to be as simple as unplugging it. She glanced at Marcus, who was already pulling out a scanner, a device they had built specifically for this mission. He turned it on and aimed it at the artifact, studying the readings that appeared on its tiny screen. "It's still drawing power from somewhere else," Marcus said quietly, his voice tense. "There's another connection, deeper inside." Lena cursed under her breath. They didn't have time for this. The distraction wouldn't hold the guards forever, and the longer they stayed, the greater the risk of being discovered. But they couldn't leave without fully disabling the artifact. Whatever secrets it held were too important to abandon. "All right," Lena said, standing up. "We go deeper. Stay close. Stay quiet." The group followed her through a narrow doorway at the back of the room. The hallway beyond was dark and cold, the walls lined with more of the glowing symbols. The air smelled strange, metallic and sharp, making it hard to breathe. Lena led the way, her rifle raised and her footsteps careful. Every step echoed faintly, and she winced at the sound. It felt like the entire building was listening. At the end of the hallway, they found what they were looking for, a large chamber filled with even more alien machinery. In the center of the room was a massive console, its surface covered in blinking lights and controls unlike anything they had ever seen. Thick cables ran from the console into the walls, feeding energy to the artifact above. This was the source. "We need to shut this down," Lena said, pointing at the console. "But we don't have much time." Marcus stepped forward, his hands moving quickly over the unfamiliar controls. He pressed buttons and flipped switches, trying to mimic patterns he had seen in other alien tech. The console hummed louder, its lights flashing erratically. For a moment, it seemed like it might work. Then a loud alarm blared through the room, piercing and relentless. "They know we're here," Sarah shouted, spinning around to face the entrance. Lena's heart sank. They had been so close. Now the only thing standing between them and capture, or worse, was how fast they could move. She grabbed Marcus by the arm. "Keep trotting. We'll hold them off." Jake and Sarah took positions near the doorway, their weapons aimed at the hallway. Moments later, the first alien guard appeared, its glowing eyes locking onto them. It raised its weapon, and the room erupted into chaos. Bullets flew, sparks erupted from the walls, and the sound of gunfire drowned out the alarm. Lena turned back to Marcus, who was still working frantically at the console. "Hurry," she yelled over the noise. "I'm almost there," he shouted back, his fingers flying over the controls. The artifact's glow began to flicker, its energy weakening. Lena clenched her fists, praying they weren't too late. The battle raged on as Lena and her team fought to hold back the alien guards. The hallway outside was now filled with the sounds of gunfire, shouts, and the eerie screeches of the aliens. Sarah fired her rifle in short bursts, aiming carefully to conserve ammunition. Jake used his makeshift shield to block incoming energy blasts, the metal sparking and smoking under the intense heat. They were outnumbered, but their determination kept them standing. Inside the chamber, Marcus worked feverishly at the console. His hands trembled as he pressed buttons and adjusted dials, trying to shut down the artifact before it was too late. The machine's lights flickered faster now, its hum growing louder and more unstable. Sweat dripped down his face as he muttered to himself, "Come on, just a little more." Lena glanced over her shoulder at him, her heart pounding. She wanted to help, but she couldn't leave the others to fight alone. Instead, she turned her attention back to the doorway, raising her rifle and firing at an alien that had managed to slip past Jake's shield. The creature stumbled backward, its armor scorched, and disappeared into the smoke-filled hallway. "We can't keep this up forever," Sarah shouted, reloading her weapon. Her voice was strained, and Lena could see the fear in her eyes. They were running out of time and ammunition. Marcus suddenly let out a triumphant shout. "Got it," he yelled, slamming his hand down on a large red button at the center of the console. The room shook violently as the artifact above them powered down completely, its shimmering glow fading into darkness. For a moment, there was silence, broken only by the sound of the group's heavy breathing. But the victory was short-lived. The aliens outside roared in anger, their glowing eyes piercing through the smoke. They charged forward, their weapons blazing. Lena knew they couldn't stay here any longer. "Fall back," she ordered, grabbing Marcus by the arm and pulling him toward the exit. Now, the group retreated quickly, moving as one through the darkened hallway. Behind them, the angry shrieks of the aliens echoed, growing louder with every second. Lena led the way, her mind racing. They needed a plan, and fast. If they didn't find cover soon, they wouldn't make it out alive. As they reached the edge of the ruined building, Lena spotted something that made her heart leap. An abandoned vehicle half buried in rubble. It looked old and damaged, but it might still work. "Over there," she shouted, pointing toward it. "Get inside." Jake and Sarah sprinted ahead, climbing into the vehicle while Marcus scrambled after them. Lena stayed behind for a moment, firing her rifle to hold off the advancing aliens. When she was sure the others were safe, she jumped into the driver's seat and slammed her fist onto the ignition panel. To everyone's relief, the engine sputtered to life. "Hold on," Lena yelled, slamming her foot down on the accelerator. The vehicle lurched forward, kicking up clouds of dust and debris as it sped away from the outpost. Behind them, the aliens fired wildly, their energy blasts narrowly missing the fleeing group. One shot hit the rear of the vehicle, causing sparks to fly, but Lena didn't slow down. She weaved through the ruins, using the crumbling buildings as cover until they were far enough away to breathe again. When they finally stopped, the group sat in silence, their chests heaving as they caught their breath. Marcus clutched the scanner tightly in his hands, his eyes wide with disbelief. "We did it," he said softly, almost to himself. "We actually did it." Lena nodded, though her expression remained serious. This was just the beginning. The artifact was in their possession now, but they still didn't know what secrets it held or how it could help humanity fight back. One thing was certain, though, the aliens wouldn't stop coming. Not until Earth was theirs, or until humanity proved they weren't ready to give up. For the first time in months, Lena felt a spark of hope. They had taken a stand, and they had won. But the war was far from over. The vehicle came to a stop in a hidden valley surrounded by tall, jagged cliffs. The group had chosen this location days ago as their fallback point, knowing it would be difficult for the aliens to find them here. Lena stepped out of the driver's seat, her legs stiff from the long drive. She scanned the area carefully, making sure they were truly alone. The others followed, stretching their sore muscles and taking deep breaths of the cool night air. Marcus placed the artifact gently on the ground, its surface now dull and lifeless. He knelt beside it, pulling out his scanner again. The device hummed softly as he ran it over the crystal, studying the readings that appeared on the tiny screen. His brow furrowed in concentration, and he muttered to himself as he worked. The others gathered around him, watching silently. "What does it say?" Sarah asked after a moment, breaking the silence. Her voice was quiet, almost hesitant, as if she was afraid of the answer. Marcus didn't respond immediately. He continued to analyze the data, his fingers tapping rapidly on the scanner's controls. Finally, he looked up at the group, his face pale but determined. "It's some kind of map," he said slowly. "A map of their network. Their bases, supply lines, everything." Lena's eyes widened. This was more than they had hoped for. If the map was accurate, it could show them exactly where the aliens were weakest, where they could strike next. But there was a catch. Marcus hesitated before continuing, his voice dropping even lower. "It's encrypted. I can't read it all yet. We'll need time to decode it." Time was something they didn't have much of. The aliens would already be searching for them, and it wouldn't take long for them to figure out what had been stolen. Lena clenched her fists, her mind racing. They needed a safe place to work, somewhere far from enemy patrols, somewhere they could plan their next move without being discovered. "We'll head to the resistance base," she said finally, her voice firm. "They have people who can help us crack this thing." Jake nodded in agreement, though his expression was grim. "It's risky. The journey won't be easy. And if we're caught with this," he trailed off, glancing at the artifact. "We don't have a choice," Lena replied sharply. "If we don't try, we've already lost." The group packed up quickly, wrapping the artifact in a thick tarp to hide its glow. They loaded it into the vehicle along with their remaining supplies and climbed back inside. Lena took the driver's seat once more, gripping the wheel tightly as she guided the vehicle out of the valley. The road ahead was rough and uneven, but she drove steadily, her focus unwavering. As they traveled, the weight of what they carried settled heavily on all of them. This small crystal might hold the key to humanity's survival, or it might be nothing more than a trap. Either way, they couldn't turn back now. Each mile brought them closer to safety, but also closer to danger. Hours passed in tense silence. The landscape outside grew darker as clouds rolled in, blocking out the stars. Rain began to fall, light at first, then heavier, drumming against the roof of the vehicle. Lena squinted through the windshield, trying to see the path ahead. The headlights barely cut through the storm, and the muddy roads made driving even harder. Suddenly, Sarah pointed toward the horizon. "Look!" she exclaimed. Through the rain, faint lights could be seen flickering in the distance. It was the resistance base, a cluster of makeshift shelters and fortified walls nestled in the shadow of a mountain. Relief washed over the group as they approached the gates. Guards emerged from their posts, weapons raised until they recognized Lena and her team. The gates creaked open, allowing them to enter. Inside, the camp was alive with activity despite the late hour. People moved between tents, tending to wounded soldiers or working on damaged equipment. The smell of smoke and damp earth filled the air. Lena led the group to the command tent, where Commander Hayes waited. He was an older man with graying hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. When he saw the artifact, his expression turned serious. "You got it," he said simply, nodding in approval. "It's encrypted," Marcus explained quickly. "We need your tech team to help us decode it." Hayes stroked his chin thoughtfully. "We'll do what we can, but remember, this is just the beginning. Even with this map, the fight won't be easy." Lena met his gaze, her resolve stronger than ever. "We didn't come this far to give up now," she said firmly. "Whatever it takes, we'll finish this." Inside the command tent, the mood was tense but focused. Commander Hayes wasted no time. He called for his best tech specialists and ordered them to set up a secure workstation in the corner of the tent. Tables were quickly brought in, covered with sheets of protective material, and loaded with tools and equipment scavenged from alien ruins. Marcus carefully placed the artifact on the table, unwrapping it from the tarp. Its dull surface seemed almost harmless now, but everyone in the room knew better. The tech team got to work immediately, surrounding the artifact with scanners, wires, and computers. One specialist, a young woman named Priya, took charge. She connected the artifact to a large screen mounted on the wall, her fingers flying across the keyboard as lines of code and strange symbols appeared. The rest of the group watched silently, their eyes glued to the screen. "It's complicated," Priya said after a few minutes, her voice calm but intense. "Their encryption is unlike anything we've seen before. It's layered, like a puzzle within a puzzle." "How long will it take?" Lena asked, stepping closer to the table. Priya hesitated, then shook her head. "I can't say for sure. Hours, maybe days, but we'll do everything we can." Lena nodded, though frustration burned in her chest. Every second they spent decoding the map was another second the aliens could use to find them. Still, there was nothing they could do but wait and prepare. While the tech team worked, Commander Hayes pulled Lena aside. "We need to be ready. he said quietly, his voice low and urgent. "If this map is real, it'll change everything. But it'll also make us a bigger target." "I know," Lena replied, her jaw tightening. "What do you suggest?" Hayes gestured toward a map of the region pinned to the wall. "We fortify our position here, but we also send scouts to check the areas closest to us. If the aliens are planning an attack, we need to know about it before they strike." Lena agreed. She left the tent and gathered a small team of volunteers, including Jake and Sarah. Together, they prepared to leave the base at first light, scouting the nearby areas for signs of enemy movement. As she worked, Lena couldn't shake the feeling that time was running out. Back in the command tent, Marcus stayed with the tech team, watching over their progress. He didn't want to leave the artifact unattended, not even for a moment. Priya noticed his unease and gave him a reassuring smile. "You did good getting this far," she said softly. "Let us handle the rest." Marcus nodded, though he still hovered nearby, unable to relax. His mind raced with questions. What would the map reveal? Would it really give humanity the edge they needed? Or was it all just a trap, designed to lure them into a false sense of hope? Hours passed, and the rain outside continued to fall. The sound of it tapping against the tent created a steady rhythm, almost soothing despite the tension in the air. Finally, just as dawn began to break through the clouds, Priya let out a sharp gasp. Everyone turned to look at her. "I think I've got something," she said, her voice trembling with excitement. On the screen, the strange symbols began to shift and rearrange themselves, forming patterns that looked like star charts and grid lines. Slowly, a detailed map emerged, showing locations marked with glowing red dots. "That's their network," Marcus whispered, his eyes wide. "Those dots, their bases, supply depots, everything." Commander Hayes stepped forward, studying the map closely. "This changes everything," he said, his voice filled with both awe and determination. "We can hit them where it hurts, cut off their resources, force them back." But Lena wasn't celebrating yet. She stared at the map, her mind racing. Each red dot represented not just an opportunity, but a risk. Attacking any one of those locations would require careful planning, precise timing, and absolute secrecy. And if they failed, the consequences would be catastrophic. "We'll need to move fast," she said finally, turning to the others. "But we'll also need to be smart. This is our chance to turn the tide. But only if we don't mess it up." The group nodded in agreement. They had come too far to fail now. With the map in their possession, humanity's fight for survival had entered a new phase. The war was far from over. But for the first time, they had a plan. The resistance base buzzed with activity as plans were made and preparations began. The map revealed by the artifact had given them hope, but it also brought new challenges. Each glowing red dot represented a target, a chance to weaken the alien forces, but attacking any of them would require careful coordination and immense bravery. Lena stood at the center of it all, her mind racing as she worked with Commander Hayes and the others to develop a strategy. "We can't hit all of them at once," Hayes said, pointing to the map on the screen. "We don't have the numbers or the resources. We need to pick one location and make it count." Lena nodded, studying the map carefully. Her eyes landed on a cluster of red dots near the edge of the grid. "This area," she said, tapping the screen. "It's smaller than the others, but it's close to their main supply line. If we take it out, it'll disrupt their operations in this region." Hayes leaned in, examining the spot she had chosen. "It's risky," he admitted, "but it could work. What do you think, Marcus?" Marcus glanced up from his notes, his expression thoughtful. "If we disable that supply line, they'll be forced to divert resources from other areas to fix it. That could give us time to plan our next move." "Then it's settled," Lena said firmly. "We hit this target first." The group quickly divided into teams. Some would focus on gathering weapons and supplies, while others prepared vehicles for transport. Lena took charge of assembling the strike team, a small, highly skilled group that included Jake, Sarah, and a few trusted soldiers. They would lead the attack, striking fast and retreating before the aliens could respond in full force. As the hours passed, the tension in the base grew thicker. Everyone knew what was at stake. This mission wasn't just about survival. It was about proving that humanity still had a fighting chance. Lena spent the night going over every detail of the plan, making sure nothing was overlooked. She checked and rechecked her rifle, cleaned her blades, and packed extra ammunition. When she finally lay down to rest, sleep eluded her. Her mind was too busy replaying scenarios, imagining possible outcomes. At dawn, the strike team gathered outside the command tent. The air was cool and damp from the night's rain, and the sky was painted in soft shades of pink and orange. Lena addressed the group, her voice steady and clear. Today, we fight not just for ourselves, but for everyone who has lost hope. We show them that we're still here, and we're not backing down. The team nodded, their expressions grim but determined. Without another word, they climbed into the vehicles and set off toward the target location. The journey was quiet, save for the hum of engines and the occasional crackle of radios. Lena sat in the passenger seat, her gaze fixed on the horizon. She thought about all they had been through, the battles, the losses, the sacrifices. And yet, here they were, still standing. When they reached the outskirts of the alien base, they stopped and disembarked. The structure loomed ahead, surrounded by thick walls and guarded by patrols. Lena signaled for the team to spread out, staying low and using the terrain for cover. They moved silently, inching closer with each passing minute. Finally, they were in position. Lena raised her hand, signaling for the others to wait. Then, with a deep breath, she gave the signal to strike. The silence shattered as gunfire erupted, and the strike team charged forward, catching the alien guards off guard. Explosions lit up the sky as they targeted key points within the base, destroying supply crates and disabling machinery. For a moment, chaos reigned. But Lena kept her focus, shouting orders and keeping the team together. One by one, the red dots on the map began to fade. By the time reinforcements arrived, the strike team was already retreating, disappearing into the wilderness like shadows. As they drove away, Lena allowed herself a small smile. It wasn't victory yet, but it was a start. The strike team raced back toward the resistance base, their vehicles kicking up clouds of dust as they sped through the barren landscape. The mission had been a success. They had destroyed the alien supply line and dealt a significant blow to their enemy. But none of them felt like celebrating yet. The sound of pursuit echoed behind them, growing louder with each passing second. The aliens weren't giving up easily. Lena gripped the wheel tightly, her knuckles white as she pushed the vehicle to its limits. She glanced in the rearview mirror, her sharp eyes scanning the horizon. A group of alien drones was closing in fast, their sleek forms cutting through the air like knives. "Hold on," she shouted to the others, swerving sharply to avoid debris on the road. Jake leaned out of the passenger seat, his rifle raised. He fired at the drones, his shots precise but desperate. One drone exploded midair, sending shards of metal raining down around them. But for every one they took out, two more seemed to appear. Sarah sat in the back seat, reloading her weapon with trembling hands. Her face was pale, but her determination never wavered. "We're not going to make it if we don't lose them soon," Marcus said from the other vehicle, his voice crackling over the radio. Lena could hear the tension in his words. "Just keep moving," she replied firmly. "We'll find a way." Up ahead, the terrain began to change. Jagged cliffs rose on either side of the road, forming a narrow canyon. Lena's mind raced. This was dangerous territory. It would be easy to get trapped, but it was also their best chance to shake off the pursuing drones. She signaled for the convoy to follow her into the canyon, her heart pounding as they entered the shadowy passageway. The walls closed in around them, muffling the sounds of the chase. Lena drove faster, weaving between rocks and fallen boulders. Behind them, the drones struggled to navigate the tight space, their sleek bodies scraping against the cliff walls. Sparks flew as metal met stone, and several drones crashed to the ground in fiery explosions. But the aliens weren't done yet. A larger ship appeared above the canyon, its massive form casting a dark shadow over the fleeing vehicles. It hovered menacingly, its weapons charging. Lena cursed under her breath. They needed a plan, and fast. "There's a cave up ahead," Jake shouted, pointing toward a narrow opening in the cliff wall. Lena didn't hesitate. She turned the wheel sharply, guiding the vehicle into the darkness of the cave. The others followed closely behind, their headlights cutting through the gloom as they ventured deeper inside. Once they were far enough in, Lena ordered everyone to shut off their engines and lights. The cave fell silent, save for the sound of their heavy breathing. Outside, the alien ship circled the entrance, its searchlights sweeping across the rocky terrain. For a moment, it felt like time stood still. "They won't come in here," Marcus whispered, breaking the silence. "They'll think we're hiding somewhere else." Lena nodded, though she remained cautious. She motioned for the group to stay quiet and still. Minutes passed, feeling like hours. Finally, the sound of the ship faded into the distance, leaving only the echo of dripping water in the cave. When they were sure the coast was clear, Lena let out a shaky breath. "Let's move," she said softly, turning the engine back on. The convoy emerged from the cave cautiously, scanning the area for any sign of danger. The aliens were gone, for now. Back at the resistance base, the group was greeted with cheers and applause. Their victory had boosted morale, proving that humanity could fight back effectively. But Lena knew this was just one step in a much longer journey. As she stood before the gathered crowd, her voice rang out strong and clear. "This isn't the end. We've struck a blow, but the war is far from over. We keep fighting, for our homes, for our families, for Earth." And with those words, the resistance prepared for what lay ahead, united by hope and driven by resilience. The battle might be long, but humanity was ready to rise. The resistance base was alive with energy in the days following the successful strike. The victory had sparked something new among the survivors, a sense of purpose, a glimmer of hope that had been missing for so long. People worked tirelessly, repairing weapons, gathering supplies, and training for future missions. Lena walked through the camp, watching as everyone pulled together, their movements filled with focus and determination. It wasn't just about survival anymore. They were fighting to take back what had been lost. But Lena knew better than to let the momentary triumph blind her to reality. The aliens weren't defeated. They were adapting. Every attack humanity launched forced them to grow smarter, stronger, and more ruthless. And while the resistance had struck a blow to their supply line, it wouldn't cripple them for long. The war was far from over. In the command tent, Lena met with Commander Hayes and Marcus to plan their next move. The map they had decoded revealed more targets, each one critical to the alien operation. But choosing where to strike next wasn't easy. Every option carried risks, and every decision could mean life or death for dozens of people. "We need to hit them hard," Hayes said, his voice firm. "Something big, something that'll shake their confidence." Marcus nodded, pointing to another cluster of red dots on the map. "This area here, it's one of their main communication hubs. If we can take it out, we might disrupt their ability to coordinate attacks across the region." Lena studied the location carefully. It was deep within enemy territory, heavily guarded and fortified. Breaking through wouldn't be easy. But if they succeeded, it could give humanity a real advantage. "It's risky," she admitted, looking at the others. "But worth it." Hayes agreed, though his expression was grim. "We'll need more manpower for this one. And better equipment. We're talking about going into the heart of their territory." The group spent hours strategizing, mapping out every detail of the mission. They divided responsibilities, assigning teams to gather intelligence, scout the area, and prepare explosives. Lena volunteered to lead the assault team again, knowing the danger but unwilling to ask anyone else to take the risk. As preparations continued, Lena found herself reflecting on everything they had been through. The faces of those who had fallen haunted her, the friends, the comrades, the innocent civilians caught in the crossfire. She thought about Sarah, whose hand still trembled when she held a rifle, and Jake, who rarely spoke about the family he'd lost. Each person carried scars, both visible and hidden, yet they kept moving forward. That resilience was what made humanity strong. On the eve of the mission, Lena stood outside the command tent, staring up at the night sky. The stars were faint, obscured by smoke and ash, but she could still see their faint glow. For a moment, she allowed herself to imagine a world without war, a world where the skies were clear and people lived without fear. It felt like a distant dream, but it was enough to keep her going. Thinking about tomorrow, Marcus asked, joining her. His voice was soft, almost hesitant. Lena nodded, her gaze fixed on the horizon. Just wondering if we're doing the right thing. Marcus didn't answer right away. When he finally spoke, his words were simple but meaningful. We don't have a choice. Giving up isn't an option. Not for us, not for them. He gestured toward the camp, where lights flickered in the darkness and voices carried on the wind. Lena smiled faintly, feeling a renewed sense of resolve. You're right. We fight. For all of them. The next morning, the assault team gathered at the edge of the base, ready to depart. The air was cold and sharp, biting at their skin as they loaded weapons and checked gear. Lena addressed the group one last time, her voice steady and clear. This won't be easy, but we've faced worse, and we've come out stronger. Today, we show them that no matter how many times they try to break us, we'll always rise. With those words, the team set off, disappearing into the vast unknown. Ahead of them lay danger, uncertainty, and the weight of humanity's hopes. But they moved forward anyway, driven by courage and the unshakable belief that even in the darkest times, light could still prevail. The journey to the alien communication hub was long and grueling. The terrain grew harsher with every mile, shifting from barren plains to dense forests and jagged cliffs. The air became colder, biting at exposed skin, and the wind carried an eerie silence that made everyone uneasy. Lena led the team with quiet determination, her eyes scanning the horizon for any sign of danger. Each step brought them closer to their target, but also deeper into enemy territory. By the second day, they reached the edge of a wide valley. In the distance, towering structures loomed against the gray sky. These were no ordinary buildings. They pulsed with faint blue light, their surfaces shimmering like liquid metal. Alien guards patrolled the area, their glowing eyes scanning for intruders. This was it, the heart of the enemy's communication network. Lena signaled for the group to stop. They crouched behind a cluster of rocks, studying the scene before them. It's heavily guarded, she whispered, her voice barely audible over the wind. We'll need to split up. One team creates a distraction while the other moves in to plant the explosives. Jake nodded, his expression grim. I'll lead the distraction team. We'll draw their attention away from the main entrance. Good, Lena replied. Marcus and I will handle the explosives. Once we're inside, we won't have much time. Everyone ready? The group nodded silently, their faces tense but resolute. They had trained for moments like this, but nothing could fully prepare them for what lay ahead. With a final glance at each other, they split into two teams and moved into position. Jake's team struck first, firing flares into the air and setting off small charges near the perimeter. The explosions lit up the night, drawing the aliens' attention instantly. Shouts echoed across the valley as patrols rushed toward the commotion. Lena watched from her hiding spot, waiting for the right moment to move. When the coast was clear, she and Marcus sprinted toward the nearest structure. Their footsteps crunched softly on the frost-covered ground, blending with the chaos caused by Jake's team. Reaching the base of the building, they slipped inside through a narrow opening, their breaths shallow and quick. Inside, the air hummed with energy. Strange symbols glowed on the walls, pulsing in rhythm with the machinery around them. Lina tightened her grip on her rifle, her senses on high alert. "Stay close," she murmured to Marcus, who carried the explosives strapped to his back. They moved quickly, navigating the labyrinthine corridors until they found the central chamber. It was massive, filled with towering consoles and glowing panels. Wires snaked across the floor, connecting everything to a single core, a pulsating orb of light suspended in the center of the room. "This is it," Marcus said, his voice trembling with excitement. "If we destroy this, their entire network will collapse." Lina nodded, keeping watch as Marcus set to work. His hands moved swiftly, attaching charges to key points around the core. The hum of the machinery grew louder, almost deafening, as if the system knew it was under threat. Sweat dripped down Marcus's face, but he didn't stop. Finally, he stepped back, holding up the detonator. "Ready," he said firmly. Lina grabbed his arm, pulling him toward the exit. "Let's go." They retraced their steps, moving faster now. Behind them, alarms blared, filling the corridors with flashing red lights. The aliens had discovered the sabotage and were closing in fast. Lina fired blindly over her shoulder, buying them precious seconds. Her heart pounded as they burst out of the building and into the open air. "Fall back," Lina shouted into her radio. Jake's team was already retreating, firing sporadically to cover their escape. Lina and Marcus joined them, running full speed toward their vehicles hidden in the distance. Once everyone was safely aboard, Lina gave the order to detonate. Marcus pressed the button, and a massive explosion erupted behind them, lighting up the valley like daylight. The alien structures crumbled, their glow fading into darkness. For a moment, there was silence. Then cheers broke out among the team. They had done it. They had struck another blow against the invaders. But Lina's expression remained serious. This victory was important, but it wasn't the end. There would be more battles, more sacrifices. Still, as she looked at her team, battered but unbroken, she felt a spark of hope. Humanity wasn't just surviving, it was fighting back. And that fight would continue, no matter what.